Shut up and sit down.
Oh, I need your advice.
Yeah?
See, I got this friend named Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo.
That's the worst name I ever heard.
How fast can you ride your bike? He asked that Sunday night with a wild look in his eye. So I follow close behind. How fast do fast cars drive? That's what I replied. I don't stop at traffic lights. Yeah, that's how fast I ride.
You tuned in for another Dialed podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von Turing. Good job. Here is a little quote about teamwork from some guy named Michael Jordan. Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. If you haven't already done so, go find yourself a team.
Tell the girls my bike is a Ferrari. My old bicycle was a Ferrari. It rusted in the yard, and I'm sorry. I crashed my car, so when I pull up to parties, I tell the girls my bike is a Ferrari.
Joey Jojo!
Hi, welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I am Jake Von During, and today I'm here with Evan Price.
What's everybody drinking today?
LaCroix, coffee.
Polar.
Yeah.
I've got some San Pellegrino.
Our guest by
Going
far has
Italian.
the best seltzer water here. That's the fine wine of seltzer waters. Good job.
Yes. And joining us in studio today is Whitney Phillips.
Hey, thanks for having me again. It was tight to fit this in my schedule. Now that I've been on here once, it's my schedule's gotten wild.
That's like a podcast a year. I'll tell you what.
Matt Legrand, Mr. What's Up, ladies and gentlemen
Matt.
of the internet, is currently driving back from the Sun River Bend, Oregon area. And I guess he thought it was prudent not to call in on Skype with all three of his kids in the car.
You think that would just be easy? I mean, the kids are probably all asleep now, right?
That could have been comedy gold.
Oh, it would have been
We
great.
could have put the kids on the phone and asked them questions
The
about their
Legrand
dad.
car?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been awesome. We just need to have his kids on and just leave Matt at home one day. Oh, that'd be so cool.
Matt, your chair is taken. I'm keeping it warm.
Yes.
Yes, and Mr. Lance, the romance man, is sitting somewhere in a field in Idaho. We tried getting him on, but his Skype connection was just awful. So, and I think the last we heard of him, he might have gotten attacked by a bear or something.
He's the Carmen Sandiego of this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, I never know where in the world he is. I just assume Idaho now.
Like originally he was going to be here, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he felt like just going down to Baker City to watch a little race with a bunch of our teammates in it this past weekend. And then he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Boise, Idaho, and I'm going to go up there and do some riding."
He just said he was heading east.
Go east, young man.
Yeah.
Go east. Yeah.
Yeah, so was the life of Lance Hepler.
Yes.
Good for him. All right, we are going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to push the back pedal back a little bit, and we're going to lead with the lead-out news. Maybe that makes sense. Push the back pedal back, lead with the lead-out news. Maybe that's a new thing for us.
I like it.
But in our lead-out news this week, we're actually going to do it a little bit differently. We're not bringing you news. We're going to give you our news on our Tour de France picks. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious from you guys who you're picking. And possibly, do you have a dark horse as well? Kind of like your plan B if your lead horse, your lead guy, your main guy,
Yeah.
doesn't make it.
So I'll go first because I think my dark horse is basically who I had picked to do well at the Giro, which did not happen. I'm going with Michael Woods as my dark horse. I think he has a top 5 finish. I think he goes top 5.
Okay.
It's a heavy climbing tour, a very heavy
Yeah, a lot of
climbing tour
climbing.
this year. Michael Woods is one of the best climbers in the tour. Here's the problem with picks in the tour, though, is that it's not those stages that you want to be confident in. It's the 12 stages leading up to that. Is there going to be a crash? Is there going to be a mechanical? Is he going to get sick? There's so many things that can happen during the tour. But so should we do dark horses first? Everybody go around, say their dark horses, and then we'll go podiums and winners.
Sure.
Let's do it that way. Let's do it that way.
Okay,
You got a
I've-
dark horse for us, Whitney?
I've got a dark horse or two. I think kind of a sleeper pick for me is going to be Richie Port. I
Okay.
think he's
Yeah, I
got
like
some,
that.
some
Yeah.
options. I almost think Adam Yates could pull something off
Yates
to
is a
this year
great dark
too.
horse pick. Yeah, I like that.
If Richie Port does make it through, that'd be fantastic. What's the over-under on the number of days before he has some sort of like
Right.
crash or stupid
Something.
mechanical
Yeah,
that puts him out of it?
Yeah.
Over under, I'm going to say it's going to be 10 stages. I mean, that's really when it starts to heat up is past that first week and a half.
I would agree with you. That was the exact number I was going to
Crash
say.
and burn.
And they do have some cobbled sections this year, correct? I need to look back at the stages, but I'm pretty sure they do.
Maybe, yeah.
I think they do.
I don't know.
Somebody should correct us on that, but I'm pretty sure they got a cobbled stage.
Maybe we could do a stage preview next week. So, and when this comes out, we will just be a few days shy of the tour actually starting.
There will be the prologue and a couple sprint stages will be done.
So Saturday the 6th.
Saturday, it's a big route. It's a big one. It's like almost a couple 100K.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. So, Evan, did you say your dark horse? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. So actually looking at the first couple days of the tour real quick, the first stage is actually going to be, like you were saying, it's actually a long sprint stage. The team time trial is day number 2, which that's I'm not sure if they've ever done a team time trial on stage 2 before, which will be very interesting.
Early. Yeah.
That's very early for a team time trial.
Gotcha. My dark horse, I'm going to play Homer, and I want this guy to do well. TJ Van Garderen. That's super dark. I mean, it's almost like dark horse, but I would love to see him and the guys from EF have like a good tour and have them be up front and center just because we're Americans and we want to support our boys.
That would be cool.
Let's go, EF. Come on.
Vegas is saying 100-1 on him.
Is it?
Yeah. So that's a pretty dark horse.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know we had talked about this. I mean, he's done well on the lead up in the very recent lead up. So, I did see somewhere that. So I know we were talking about the Tour de Suisse earlier, and that just talking about one of the favorites. I'm sure we're all going to mention the Team Ineos rider Bernal. There's a stat that it has been a long time since somebody who either podiumed or won the Tour de Suisse won the Tour de France. That is not apparently a good predictor. The Dauphiné is considered the much more, better predictor usually.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't even think about that too much though, because this kid's strong. Like Bernal's very, very strong, and maybe just in the past, your stronger riders haven't gone to the Tour de Suisse. But
so on that note, who's your lead guy? Who's your big guy? Who's picking a win?
So here's my winner, and I'm. Being of Italian descent, this makes me sick to even make this pick, but I think this is actually the year that the French figure it out. I think Bardet wins.
You think so, huh?
That's my win. There's so much climbing in this tour.
Yeah, you went on the record and said that earlier.
I did. Yeah,
gonna be a Frenchman
I think there's going to be a Frenchman this time.
Okay.
They are desperate for a win between Pinot and Bardet. One of them has to figure it out, and I think it's going to be Bardet this year.
Gotcha.
There's enough climbing. The problem is he's going to lose time in the team time trial, and he's going to lose time in the time trial. But I think the mountain stages are so vicious that he's going to have a day where he gets away, and there's going to be a lot of time lost. I mean, if your team is flying in a team time trial, you can get yourself 2-3 minutes on rivals. If you're like a BMC level like time trial team. If you die on Mount Ventoux or a climb like that or Alpe d'Huez, you can lose 15 minutes.
20, 15
you if a favorite absolutely cracks on one of those days, you can lose some time.
Yeah. Who are you picking, Whitney?
Well, this might be kind of boring, but I'm going to go with Geraint Thomas.
Geraint?
I think he's got a chance, and he's a good time trialer. He's not the greatest climber.
He's a great time trialist.
He's a great time trialist, and he's got a good team around him.
I'm going to go with Egan Bernal.
Oh, I like that pick between Whitney and Jake right now because you got
I've been reading bits and pieces here that Geraint does not have the best fitness right now, and he's not as fit as he normally is.
I don't think he's as lean. He's not as lean as he was last year.
He's carrying a little bit of extra weight, and the young kid has kind of been making a couple pokes at him, a couple stabs, and you have to think that that's because he thinks that Geraint's probably not the right guy to support.
Yep.
Now he's been quasi-diplomatic about it, been somewhat professional. Maybe some of the stuff has been misconstrued just a tiny bit in the media, but you have to know that there's got to be some truth to that. So I think that there's going to be a little changing of the guard there.
First article that I'm looking at here is Geraint Thomas welcomes joint leadership with Bernal.
There you
welcomes,
go.
quote unquote, welcomes. Yeah, okay.
Go get him, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcomes joint leadership.
Yeah.
He's just egging Bernal to attack early, and hopefully he can respond.
He's a young 22 years old. He's got testosterone naturally pumping through his veins, and he's just going to be somebody exciting to watch. I mean, he's been exciting to watch thus far.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he has the fitness to last 3 weeks.
I think he does.
That's the thing. He's got the explosiveness for the climbs, but 2 weeks into a Grand Tour, does he have the explosiveness? Is going to be the question. Yeah.
That's why we watch the race.
Exactly. That's why it happens.
All right, and we'll let Matt and Lance get on record too when they come back next week, even though they'll have 2 days of viewership, maybe even 3.
Not fair, but
Yeah.
that's okay. We've got our dark horses and winners. We can discuss like top 5s once they come here, and
Gotcha.
We'll have
we'll
them
have a
text
little
it to
better
you
idea.
before they get on, before it starts.
This
on
is
the
true.
There you
Saturday.
go.
We
There
should
you go.
post it then right after
put
that.
them on
to
the record by the end of
hold
the
them
week.
to record.
There
yeah.
you go. Cool. All right, let's do our back pedal. Whitney, I'm going to save you because you've got stories for days.
Well, I can do a short back pedal too.
And, well, it's going to segue nicely into our
Okay,
topic for
sure.
today. But Evan, back pedal for us.
So I'll see if I can get my training summary in under 15 seconds here. It happened. Back on track, running well, biking well, starting to swim well. Anyway, so there were some really, really good triathlons that happened this last week.
Sure.
Like a big race week for the professional Ironman circuit. There was an ITU race as well. But this last week we had a friend of mine who races up in Bellingham. He's from Bellingham, David Larpenter, and just a great, like, this is his first year as a pro, great running history. Really starting to get his feet wet with swimming and biking in the last couple of years, and really starting to improve. Had a good coming out party in Coeur d'Alene, 73. I think he was 19th out of 27 starting pros. So me and him are in the same boat of being at the back of the middle field, but he had a good run. Had kind of the same issues that I usually have, which is coming out of the swim with some ground to make up, but put it together on a good, race day. It was a beautiful day in Coeur d'Alene. Outside of that, this is not a back pedal of my own, but anybody who pays attention to Ironman, since I know we're going to go straight down a cycling focus this podcast today, Ironman Frankfurt happened this last weekend, which pitted 2 favorites for Kona against each other. Really 3 favorites, but it came down to 2. You had Jan Frodeno and Sebastian Kienle, who me and Matt talk about on this podcast quite a bit.
Uber bikers,
yeah. Jan's just an Uber everything. Sebastian, absolutely one of the best cyclists in the sport. And they went toe-to-toe basically through the entire race, and Jan outran him. But a cool little story from there. Sebastian Kienle somehow, I think it may have been coming out of the water, got glass in his foot, biked the 112 miles with glass in his foot.
Oh my God.
I had an incredible bike split. Comes off the bike, goes to the med tent. They're pulling this glass shard out of his heel. Jan Frodeno, because they came right off the bike together, instead of just running off to go for the win, goes and checks on Sebi to make sure he's okay.
Wow.
Yeah, comes up to him in the middle of the race, is like, hey, is he okay? Is he okay? And, so Sebastian says, no, go, you go. They pull the shard out, he throws his run shoes on, and they battle it out.
Wow.
And I mean battle it out. I think Sebi actually caught him. Jan dropped him, and I think Sebi caught him again, and then Jan dropped him one more time. So,
Wow, that's amazing.
and they were head and shoulders above the rest of the field. It's one of the most competitive Ironmans all year, and they were on another planet from everybody else.
Wow.
So,
I love hearing that kind of stuff. That's such good sportsmanship.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring that up, because as soon as you saw that, it goes back to triathlon a couple of years ago in the World Championship. The Brownlee brothers, who anybody who kind of follows the Olympics may know them. Alistair was the gold medalist twice. Johnny and Alistair are racing in the World Championship, and Johnny, Alistair's brother, goes for the win in the last mile and cracks in the last 200 meters to where he's actually swerving over the road. Alistair, instead of racing for the win, goes and stops and grabs his brother and drags him across the finish line because he knew that Johnny, to get the points he needed that season, had to get across the finish line in 3rd place. So Alistair literally grabs him and they run together. There's this really cool video of it.
I've
if
seen the
anybody's
pictures.
seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was like huge news in Britain and around the world, but yeah, that's you love to see that, and I kind of saw that moment with Jan, and that kind of brought back to that. So
how many hours did you put in this week training?
21 and a half, I think.
Oh,
Good God. Well,
These next 4 weeks are going to be a lot more.
ask him.
So.
Ask him what his future couple weeks are going to look
So
like.
I'm
Just on the
lucky-
bike. Just on the
Yeah,
bike.
just on the bike. So this week I'm very lucky. I will not be in the clinic on July 4th, which gives me an extra day to play with. So I'm going to try is the key word. I'm going to try to get 20 hours this week on the bike, and then back it up with 2 14 or 15 hour weeks right after that.
Oh my God! Wow.
Just the bike.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gotta be fast going into August.
sick.
It's time for me to actually
Wow.
really
And
I
focus
love
on the
it.
bike.
What
But
I do to divide my age by 2 again.
I'm just soaking it up now because I know this is not lasting forever. So
I'm going to jump into my back pedal real quick, and then we're going to let Whitney go. There's a reason why we invited him to come back for today. We had short track this past Monday, and it was another great week. We had another big, strong showing of guys in my race. I think there was 5 of us, if I'm not mistaken. We were missing Scott Troutman because he's having some knee problems, but I think there was still another 5 of us in the race. So we did well. I got
come
second.
see me, Scott.
Yeah, I got second place. I was happy about that. Danny Winkle put it to us pretty good this week. That guy is just so smooth. He's really
I was going to
stinking
ask
smooth.
how strong he came
And
out.
you know what? I've been watching him too, and I've been taking note where I lose a lot of time to him is when we're passing traffic. And man, I wish we could go and talk to the promoters. They put the U44 Cat 1s in front of us, and they let them go, what is it, about 30, 45 seconds ahead? We always catch them by the end of the first lap because we're going like a half mile an hour faster than them. And once we catch those guys, a lot of them are thinking that we're in the race. So they're not
They don't let
really
you pass.
Exactly. So you're having to burn matches at them. And I'm watching Danny. I'm like, how in the world did he just get by that 1, 2, 3 group of guys so quickly? And I'm back here like having to pick them off one at a time. I think he's being a little bit more vocal with them. And I don't think he's being a jerk, but I think he's just like yelling at them, get out of the way. Or
He's just communicating.
In a different category.
Yeah. And I think that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
I still don't think I would have got him because he is in much better shape than I am right now. And he's just smooth through there and he knows how to ride that perfectly. So
I'd love
kudos
to
to
see
him.
you two just like just clear course, go at it.
He's
Or do you
probably-
think-
I
yeah.
think he has better fitness than I do.
Okay.
Honest to God, I just think he has better fitness than.
He's got pretty darn good fitness then.
Yeah. Well, I've been off like ever since the team time trial that we did. Since then, I've kind of like my volume's been cut back and been riding on the trainer, and I've just kind of been like that because my
Yeah.
shoulder's been hurting me.
How'd the shoulder feel on there? That was what I was waiting to hear this
You know
week.
what? The way that I've been setting my weeks up is that I'm really just giving my shoulder all the rest that I can, just so I can
Yeah.
race short track. But this past week, I think turned a corner.
Good.
I only
Good.
spent one day on the trainer, and I rode outside all the others. And this past weekend was pretty good too. I put in, I think it was like 5.5 hours this past weekend.
Okay.
So that was good on the bike outdoors.
Yeah.
Half of that though was all done on the gravel bike or the cross bike, but it was like a mixture of like gravel, mountain bike roads,
Rough surface.
technical
Harder
stuff.
riding.
And
Yeah.
I know, and I spent, it was about 2 hours and 45 minutes on that bike riding. It was almost 35 miles with a lot of climbing and technical stuff in there. And I really wanted to see how it would hold up after the problems that I've been having. And B, I wanted to start figuring out, well, am I going to be able to do the cyclocross thing in the fall? So I had
That's pretty
a
hopeful.
nice vote of confidence because I woke up yesterday. It was sore, but it wasn't like a terrible sore. I'm like, all right, I can get through this. And I went out and did another 2.5 hour plus ride, and it managed. It did its thing, and it's not hurting too much today. It's again stiff,
That's
but
good. That's good.
We'll keep cranking on that.
So when you're in short track during the race, where does your shoulder hurt the most? What are you doing?
It's just it's probably just through like the technical stuff. Just having like really like when you have to stabilize yourself and you're turning, you're leaning on it and you're having to pull and go over stuff. That's when you feel it. And it's when you're in the heat of the moment and you've got the blood pumping through your veins and your heart's about ready to jump out of your chest and
Adrenaline's
you
one
got a little
heck
bit
of
of
a pain
adrenaline
blocker.
running in there. You don't feel it. I feel it more right after the race. Like I remember this past week, the first thing I did was rode over to my car, leaned my bike up there, and I had to go over and stretch because it was just starting to scream at me. I'm like, oh, please, don't let this be a bad thing. So, I went over and did some stretching, and that helped a little bit. And then as the night goes on, it gets a little bit sore, and then I wake up the next morning, and it's just like somebody hit my arm with a 2x4, and I'll just kind of work through it, and then it'll feel all right. But
Well, you got a week off.
yeah, we don't have any short track tonight, so
No short track. There's also no PIR this week. Did I hear that right?
But I think there is Mount Tabor on Wednesday.
They're still keeping
they're going to
paper.
do that the day
It's
before
still
4th
on,
of July, huh?
it's still on the calendar.
Oh, right on. Are you going to race that?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
For my age group, I think it's like 6 miles. So
But that's an intense 6
It
miles.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not short track 6 miles.
no, it's not.
So, and other than that, we had our little Foghat ride on Friday. It was a smaller group because there was a lot of people that went out of town
lot
this
of people
weekend for
racing.
all kinds of racing. Like there was triathlons, there was mountain bike racing, there was road bike stage racing. There was all kinds of fun stuff. It was a small group, but it was a good group because we still had more new people show up and got to meet some new folks, and more people are excited about coming out. So I think come like the end of the summer, I think if once we start to get everybody back in town, that's going to be a big ride. It's going to be a lot of fun to have all those folks come out, and we'll just go take over the streets of Camas and Vancouver, Washington. Maybe we'll even go to Portland one of these days. But anyway, it was a good week. Whitney, backpedal for us.
Okay, I've got a little bit of backpedal.
Much bigger than
What
ours.
did you do this past week, Whitney?
Well, the past week I've been trying to get my volume up a little bit,
Sure.
so that I can, ride the Seattle to Portland in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
But in between that, we had a big event for the team, and it was the Baker City Cycling Classic that was held out in Eastern Oregon, and it brings people from the neighboring states.
Yep.
So we saw people from Utah, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California.
Wow.
And we brought a team out there of 5 masters. So we were in the 40 plus 345s. There
Yep.
was 5 of us. We also had somebody in the 4.5s, Jesse Tonkinson.
Uh-huh.
And then Kieran Crossley was in the Cat 3s.
Correct.
So that was a big event. And first of all, I need to shout out to John Hatfield for really organizing our team into going out to Baker City. It was a stage race, 3 days, 4 stages, road race on day 1. Day 2 was a time trial, a crit, and then day 3 was a road race.
Okay.
That was a tough road race.
Yes.
And so for those of you that have listened before, the team that went out there was Chris Hannell, Chris Surratt, John Hatfield, Ian Gibson, myself were the Masters team. Then we had Jesse Tonkinson and Kieran that were out there.
Correct.
So we had a tremendous time. Friday night after the road race, Gypsy Lance Romance came through town as he was heading east.
Played the tambourine for you all.
And all of a sudden, the van shows up, and he's in the hot tub telling Oregon Trail stories.
Did he just kind of show up, or did you guys know who was
Well,
coming?
we saw him. He had posted a ride somewhere along the Columbia River. I don't
Yeah.
know where it was. I didn't zoom in enough. And we thought, hey, you have to stop by as you're heading east. And so I think it was about 6 or 7 o'clock.
Sure.
He pops into town on Friday night. We had a place that had a pretty big backyard, so Piper was going nuts after being in the car for a while.
Yeah.
And she was running all over the place. And then Lance jumped in the hot tub and held court, telling stories of that Oregon Trail gravel grinder. But anyhow, it was nice to see him, and he stuck around for the time trial launch Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And so the stage race, for those of you that follow Chris Hannell on Strava, he has some outstanding race reports on each stage.
They're phenomenal. I was listening, or not listening to those. I was reading those, and just like in my head, just I could see exactly how it was.
He
rolling
creates
out.
he's a great storyteller.
Yeah.
And of all the people to tell the story, he was the best one. So the first day, the road race was about 70 miles. And it had a few hills in it and one big climb. And it was interesting because in our group there was a team from Utah that had about 5 or 6 riders, and then there was a couple of therapeutics guys. The David Hart, David Salzberg were in our group, and then the rest were just a bunch of independents. I think we had 23 people in our field, so kind of a smaller field for a stage race. And then about 10 miles into it, I think Chris Hannell got a little bored, because we were kind of taking an easy pace. Because I think a lot of the riders were thinking of the weekend ahead and thought, we better just take it easy. So Chris pulls off his trademark, I'm tired of this, and took off the front.
Yeah, for those of you keeping track at home, again, this is the same guy that at the Kings Valley Road Race, they said, all right, y'all get on.
Yeah.
Whatever that was that lady said. And he jumped
At the gun.
and left everybody behind and did the entire race solo off the front.
Yeah.
That's like his signature trademark move.
He also apparently did this one while chewing on a Cliff Bar, correct? From his race report, it sounded like he was mid-bite of a Cliff Bar and just kind of rolled off.
He started on the Cliff Bar, but he took off the front a little bit and saw that nobody was going to follow him, so he just kept going. He said, I think it stuck to him for 7 miles or so.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, because the field didn't know who Chris Hannell was for the most part, there were some local guys that did. But we were going into a little bit of a headwind and some rollers, and he took off. I think we had 65 miles left. and a climb.
What a place to take off. Who takes off into a headwind?
So, so the only other organized team thought, this guy can't do this,
Yeah.
and let him go,
Yep.
which you'd probably do at that point in a race
yeah.
many times. So they start talking to us, and they said, who was that went up there? And we're like,
He's
I don't
not
know.
strong. Yeah,
I don't know.
No, he's fine.
And I remember Ian heard somebody ask this question. This was hilarious. Somebody asked Ian, is that guy a strong rider? And Ian says, he's strong and he's crazy. So he stayed away the whole race and put 5 minutes, 18 seconds into the field for the general classification. Just absolutely
Insane.
amazing.
I want him to post his power profile from that just so we can all gawk at it. That's incredible.
And he said he was starting to fade on power numbers in the hills that were probably 10 miles left in the race. But luckily he had such a lead that it really didn't matter.
What was his gap by the end of that?
Well, by the end of the race, it was 5 minutes, 18 seconds.
That's incredible.
And
Oh
he
my
had
God.
some strong riders. And what the cool thing about it is Chris Surratt came in second. So he was
Good.
the first of the chase group. And John Hatfield kind of led Chris in to the last, I guess 500 meters. And then John came in right behind that main field. And then I was pulling a chase group that was about 5 minutes behind them.
Yeah.
And so what was really helpful was Surratt had his family at the top of the climb,
Yep.
giving us water bottles, our own
Nice.
special water bottles. But what the part of the race, the other team thought, let's try to catch this guy. So they were just drilling the front, and we would get kind of mixed in with their pace line, and we'd get to the front and just kind of sit there, and they'd look back and their shoulders, it's like, oh, it's them. and so they really worked hard after they realized he was creating a big gap, and it was just no way they were going to catch him. And one of the things that they said afterwards was that we put their whole team on the back foot from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it was really cool to have another organized team there that had about the same numbers, but they certainly didn't have the weapon like we did with Chris Hannell and Chris
Yeah.
Surratt.
Yeah, I think just with with guys both capable of going that far. I mean, I'm sure if Surratt had gotten off the front too, he could probably stay away for 50, 60 miles on a course like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have two guys that basically, if one gets brought in, you just launch the other. That's that's about as dangerous a combination as you can get
Yeah.
in a long road race with people a little bit, who don't know those two very well.
Right. And the thing is that we didn't know how this was going to play out. So we had a few different scenarios, and of course, I was just playing a supporting role, but what we were hoping for is to have Chris, and Hatfield up there somewhere, and certainly that played out, but we didn't know Chris was going to go off the front for 65 miles.
Yeah. So had the other team and maybe a few other individuals that gotten together and they had reeled Hannell back in, you guys had the firepower and the explosion of Chris Surratt to just basically come off and explode for a stage victory.
Right.
I mean, there's probably nobody in that field that can outsprint him. Correct.
Right. He took the leaders to the line and he beat them all.
Exactly.
Oh, he took them to the line,
handily,
too?
didn't
Yeah.
he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Man, that should have. I wish I could have watched that race.
It was just
that would've been a
classic
blast.
teamwork, and for the most part, everybody in our field was really a good sport. I mean, there was a couple of knuckleheads like you find in every
Sure.
field, but overall, it was a great group of people that we were racing against, and we got a lot of respect as a team just from some of the tactics. We weren't just out there riding as hard as we could.
Sure.
And so I think it was kind of cool to see our teamwork out there. And then in the 4.5s, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what Jesse did on the first stage, but he held his own. I think he was close to the top on that one.
He was within, I think he said something like 28 or 30 seconds,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. And I think he chiseled that down, or maybe it was I don't know, something like that. And then he chiseled it down during the time trial and the
He
crit,
eventually did very well, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But he held his own in that road race, and then Kieran kind of came out in the middle of the threes there.
Yeah. So just going back and looking at Chris's ride profile from Strava, his average speed, and I'd have to dig in a little bit more to get a little bit more power information, but his average speed pretty much solo by himself the entire time was 22.8 miles an hour for 71 miles, and that's 30, almost 3,400 feet of elevation gain.
Right. And we had a headwind in the rolling hills that were the last 10, 15 miles.
That is insane. And I'm told, and correct me if I'm wrong, his finishing time on that stage was faster than the entire peloton of the Pro 1-2. That's I think,
it might have been the Master 1-2-3s.
Oh, was it the Master 1-2-3?
I think.
Okay.
I would have to look.
Okay.
Because the pros did, I think theirs was like much quicker. It was like 2 hours and something.
Okay. So maybe it then was the Masters 1-2-3, but it was the 1-2s. That makes more sense, but still, by himself.
By himself.
Wow.
And he didn't even take a bottle.
Seriously?
There was a great neutral feed zone, plus we had Surratt's parents up there, and he took 2 bottles on his bike, and he had the same 2 bottles when he finished.
Oh my gosh.
And it was warm.
Yeah.
We're at a little bit higher altitude than what we're used to. I think we're at 3,500 feet out there, and we're all from sea level, so
yeah,
it's a little bit more drying out there. So he still only took 2 bottles.
Okay. Fast forward to the next day. That we're into Saturday now.
So, well, let me just go to the Friday night.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The Friday night spaghetti feed that they pulled out the jerseys, and I think after this year, if they have the Baker City Cycling Classic again, you need to talk to them about their leader jerseys. The leader jersey for Chris was baby blue. It doesn't go with our kit very well. And with a couple of people that were getting the leader jerseys on our team, I think that they need to change the kits. But anyhow,
gotcha.
There was a little presentation of the leader jerseys, and going into day 2, we had 2 people in the top 3 of the GC going into it. So Saturday morning was the time trial. It was a short time trial, 11 minutes or 11 miles, excuse me. And what was cool there is Chris Surratt won that, and then Chris Hannell came in second.
Exactly. And he rode on that same borrowed time trial bike that he used in the team time trial, correct?
Yeah. So shout out to Elisa Wise.
Correct.
And he had that dialed in. The only thing I can say that I did to help Chris is I showed him how to remove the back wheel of a Cervelo TT bike with the horizontal dropouts. So that's
those
the only
dropouts
thing.
are a little bit confusing if you've only worked on road
Right.
bikes before. They do.
Yeah.
They're a little weird.
So I showed him how to change a wheel really easy, and that's the only thing I can claim that I helped Chris with. But anyhow, the thing that was a little intimidating about that time trial is they gave you the reverse order of the GC the day before. So you've got guys behind you going on 30-second increments that beat you in the road race. So it gets into your head a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they split up team members so that you weren't following a teammate.
Ooh, that's smart.
So I think Chris Surratt's average speed was probably around 28 miles an hour over that 11-mile course. And I think John Hatfield and I came in 5th and 6th in the time trial, and ours was like 26, almost 27 miles an hour. But it was first thing in the morning. I think we went off just before 9 o'clock in the morning. Took us about 23 to 24 minutes. And then the crit was that afternoon at about 2 o'clock. So we had a little bit of downtime at the house. But our buddy Lance was there to help us off at the time trial. And we also had a cheering section of our Dialed Junior team of Yunji Hatfield and Deja, Jesse Whitaker's daughter.
Yes.
So
she's been on the podcast before.
Yeah. So we had a couple of people there to cheer us on.
That's awesome. They were actually sending me pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, through there. Check this out. Oh, this is Deja, by the way.
Yeah, Deja, she's a great photographer. She would take 30 pictures of each one of our poses.
That's awesome. So give us a little recap then of the crit.
Okay, so the crit was downtown Baker City, and I think it was about 0.6 miles and kind of an L-shaped. So from the start line, you had about 4 quick turns and then a couple of straightaways. And in our group, we got off and we had a couple of laps, and then we had 5 or 6 laps. And then Chris Surratt decides to go for a prime lap, and then he decides to stay away. So then he stayed away.
Went for it and then just rode through.
And just rode through and stayed away the whole time. And I think he had up to about 25 seconds on the field, and I think we closed it a little bit, but he still clearly had the whole thing.
And
in
you
the
guys
bag.
were obviously trying to control that as much as possible.
Well, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we were riding hard, but we weren't letting it get away.
Sure.
And it was the same thing as the road race the day before. We'd get in the pace line, and then all of a sudden it was our turn at the front, and then the person peeling off would look at us and kind of shrug their shoulders and go, "Oh, it's
These
him."
yahoos again.
Yep.
So then, for the most part, it was a pretty straightforward crit. There wasn't much, tomfoolery going on. But then in the last straightaway, I saw Ian, who was just getting his sprint wind up, get bumped by somebody that was really going kind of across the whole field. And he had to stutter a couple of times and keep his balance and
Sure.
then start up. But he still came in on the podium. So we had Chris Surratt, number 1. Chris Hannell came in number 2. And Ian came in 3rd.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then we all of us on the team, besides Chris, had the pack time. So we didn't,
Yeah.
there was no time lost. And then Chris got a time bonus for winning. So that was a lot of
Wow.
fun.
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
What was the time bonus?
I think it was 10 seconds,
Sure.
I think, for Chris Surratt.
Cool.
And so then Chris Hannell maintained the leader's jersey for the entire weekend.
And he didn't really lose much time to Chris Surratt on the time trial. So his GC lead at that point in time going into day 4 was what, roughly 4 minutes still?
He still had close to 5 minutes going
Wow.
into the 4th stage.
Wow.
And he maintained the jersey. And Saturday night in the house, we were having a conversation, and John Hatfield says, Chris, you're responsible for choosing our nature break. And
This is
Chris,
true, yeah.
being fairly new to racing, is like, what? We don't need to do that. So we talked about when and where he'd do it. And so he had some responsibilities with that leader's jersey.
But, well, we'll get into the final part of that story later. We finish that part. Do you have any recollection of what happened in Kieran's race, the Cat 3s, and what happened in Jesse's race in the 4-5s?
In the 4-5s with Jesse, we got there and we watched him, and he was really riding smart. Like, he's a very calculating individual, and according to Annie, he does lots of stuff on spreadsheets and exports stuff out of like. There's a lot of work that goes into his analyzing skills there.
He's a sharp kid. I guess that's why he's going to go be a doctor here pretty soon. But
exactly. So he was kind of watching the field and kind of hanging back in the back third for the first few laps.
Sure.
And then I better look and see what his result was, but I think he was
5th at the crit.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
didn't lose any time there, and he really played it smart, safe, stayed upright, and then Kieran came out kind of in the middle as well.
Good. All right.
So we had a good day at the Criterium, all safe, no mechanicals, no problems.
Gotcha. And then fast forward into stage 4.
Okay, so before I go into stage 4, I gotta talk a little bit about our house, our team house.
Okay.
So it had a nice hot tub on the back deck, but what was interesting is it had a massage chair. And, Evan probably thinks, oh, he's probably over here rolling his eyes, a massage chair or whatever. And you think about something you'd see in a mall out in front of like Brookstone or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing you pay $5 to sit in for 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So this thing, it looked hideous. I mean, it was this
Yeah.
big thing sitting in the living room. All you needed to do was sit in it once, and you're like, okay, how can I get one of these? This thing, the only thing it didn't do is it didn't do your hamstrings, your quads, and your pecs. I mean, because it didn't do anything on the top, but it was unbelievable, giving you back, shoulder, glute, calf, foot massage. I mean, it was
It didn't hit your
outrageous.
hamstrings?
It didn't quite cover that area because of the way you were sitting in the chair,
Gotcha.
but it was unreal. So we almost had to have a sign-up sheet because it had these 20-minute cycles, and we all were doing rounds in the chair. But anyways, so we had a nice, quiet Saturday evening, and then Sunday morning was the final road race, which was about 84 miles and a little bit over 7,000 feet of climbing. And most of that
That's a monster stage. Oh
came
my
in the
gosh.
last 10 miles. I think the last 10 miles had over 3,000 feet of climbing.
Oh boy.
Jeez, what was the average grade of that?
The average grade wasn't bad. I think I think it might have been 6 to 8%, 6 to 9%.
Okay. So kind of kicked up a few times and whatnot.
Yeah, but overall, you just had to really keep a steady pace. But it was 10 miles of really difficult climbing.
Gotcha. And that on Strava would be referred to as the Anthony climb, correct?
Yes. So
it's giving us the average gradient of 6%.
Yeah.
That's the average. So, and it probably kicked, like you said, a few times.
But there was up until that point, there was one climb that we did, a reverse climb of what we did on Friday, and it got spirited, but the group was entirely together. And during that race, we really had to put the kibosh on Chris going off the front because he doesn't like sitting in.
No, he does not.
And we had to get him to sit in and actually take some bottles too.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Chris wouldn't be great in a 3-week GC contention. He would just want to break away every single day.
Well, and he's got some fitness that none of us can really comprehend. Mm-hmm. So the race started out at a super slow pace. Like everybody was like not sure how this was going to go, how their fitness was. So the entire group was really putzing down the road. We even got neutralized for the 4 or 5 group to pass us, and they started 5 minutes behind us.
Oh, jeez.
But
you guys were taking it easy, but yeah.
So then we were really taking it easy till the first few hills, and then it started getting a little hot.
Yeah.
And we were trying to keep Chris Surratt, Chris Hannell, and John Hatfield protected.
Sure.
Sometimes we'd have to go up front and yank them back, and but they did do a good job of sitting in. And we got over the first climb, which was the Catherine Creek climb, which was just a little bit east of Baker City. And we got to the second feed zone, which was, probably about 55 miles in.
Sure.
And the gentleman who eventually won the stage attacked at the second feed zone.
Okay.
So I was sitting there trying to grab a couple of things, and all of a sudden the group just explodes.
No.
And I barely got back on.
Uh-huh.
And I think the group of maybe 5 to 7 riders was up front and stayed with Scott Goldstein, who attacked. But it was tough to get back in the group, and we finally all got back together. And then out in the flats before the big climb, Ian and I did a lot of work to try to keep John, Chris, and Chris in shape for the climb.
Yeah.
And so then we got to the third feed zone, which is at the bottom of the climb, and then all hell broke loose. And Scott Goldstein, who had done some work on the front, but it was rather soft, just took off up the hill. Chris Hannell stayed on his wheel the entire time. And Chris Hannell ended up coming in second on that climb, or on the stage, but maintained the jersey. And then Chris Surratt and John Hatfield came back, and I think they had a few minutes down on Chris's time.
Gotcha.
And so the exciting thing is that Chris maintained the leader jersey all the way throughout the entire stage race and won the general classification. Chris Surratt came in third, so he got on the podium. And then there was a lot of movement on that final day because of that big climb. And this person that was really unknown was out of California, and he looked like he weighed about 115 pounds.
Oh, geez.
He was really suited for that climb, and he kind of snuck in and took second. Because when you've got, just a 4-stage race and a huge climb, that huge climb puts some time into some people, and it really messed up the GC for the most part.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I lost 20 minutes on that big climb, but after kind of pulling in the flats, I had nothing left for the climb, and I knew it. I knew I didn't have a spot really throughout that climb, so I just thought I'm going to do everything I can before the climb and just enjoy the scenery.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, being a team, you had already done your job for that, so you basically just had to do what the domestique does at that point, and
exactly.
just try to get to the finish line on
it was a tough climb. It was warm, and if there was some spots that had a little bit of a tailwind, you're going 9 miles an hour, you got no air, and so it was a little bit rough.
It's been pretty hot there in years past, and I can remember hearing stories from people about heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and people really having some medical emergencies because of the heat on that. So
and John Hatfield was saying in his past experience, sometimes they would hand out pantyhose filled with ice to hang around your neck.
Oh, wow.
So luckily we had ideal weather. It was 80 something degrees, which was warm, but it wasn't hailing and raining like it's done in the past, and it wasn't 100 degrees.
Crazy.
So that's how the Masters 3-4-5 played out. And then what was really cool in the 4-5 group is Jesse Tonkinson was kind of following the leader jersey to the bottom of the climb, and the leader decides to just throw down at the beginning of the climb, and Jesse thought, oh, this isn't going to last. He's going to blow up. And sure enough, the leader jersey blew up, and Jesse rode away with the stage.
Yeah, because he only had to make up, 30-some seconds,
right.
I think, that last day. So.
But he rode away with the stage, and so it was really cool to see him take the top step.
That's awesome.
Gotcha. Who was the one that was the GC?
The GC was actually one of the guys it was his son, so Ken James, who was riding in our group.
Okay, so his son Tyler James, maybe?
It was his son Tyler James who had the jersey going into the last day.
Okay.
He decides to really just put down a ton of watts. In fact, Jesse said he was putting down 350 watts at the beginning of the climb.
Yeah.
And
it looks like Jesse ended up beating him. I guess this is the GC time by
you just have to take
6
30
minutes?
some seconds,
About
but
six-
yeah.
he really
just over
blew
6
up on the
minutes,
climb.
yeah.
So, and I guess Tyler had done this stage before, and he must have just not been having the legs for the last climb. So,
Yeah.
I mean, his father kind of wiped a couple of us off the map in our group. So Ken really had a good race for the entire 4 stages, but Tyler had a rough last day.
That's too bad for him, but awesome for Jesse.
I mean, it's really cool to see what Jesse's done in the last year. I mean, he's really come along.
He's had such a steady fitness build over the last couple of years.
Well, when he first started riding with us, I mean, he was a strong kid, but he wasn't doing anything like that was extraordinary. And that's not to take anything away from him, but it was because I think he'd had a pretty serious leg break, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
So he was still kind of recovering from that, still building up his fitness, getting back into cycling.
Yeah.
And like he would just like start doing like these little things. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. He just got a little stronger. Or like you go do a climb and like all of a sudden like you were expecting him not to be coming up for another minute or two, and he's like right there. I'm like, oh, where did he come from? And then we started doing our off-season Tuesday night Strava rides, and those get a little spirited sometimes, and we'll always have a hot section in there. And throughout the course of the whole winter off-season, those hot sections, he started actually winning those.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's this kid coming from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's been very diligent. He's been very calculated with his training. And like you said, he'll be making his spreadsheets.
Yeah.
He'll be training doing his training plan. He's commuting on the bike very frequently. He just keeps getting stronger and faster. I'm like, my God, where's this kid ceiling at? Because he's still layering up. I mean, he's still relatively young in the cycling world.
And he's kept his volume pretty low during the entire time, which I think is great because he's, like you said, he's done a really appropriate build of fitness,
but
like,
his power,
he hasn't tried to reach.
His power just keeps going up, and I think he weighs, was it 145
Not
pounds?
a lot of pounds.
Yeah.
He's lighter than I am.
It's insane. His watts per kilo are just starting to go through the roof. And
this is where, like, this winter, like you said, it was like watching Nate, Mike, and Tonk all get stronger.
Yeah.
Right.
That was like, I mean, it was going to be no surprise. Like, these are the 3 strongest guys in this region coming up.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are going to be blowing apart the fields that they're racing in. So,
well, Nate got his upgrade. He's a Cat 4 now, and he won't be a Cat 4 for much
he'll be
longer.
a 3 in no time.
As soon as he gets a little bit more experience out there in terms of racing and gets a few more races under his belt, he'll be a Cat 3 before you know it. And then poor Mike Guyvan, this is a little tangent here. He's like, how come everybody's getting upgraded but me? And I've been doing really well, and I've been winning stuff. And I was talking to him this past week, so he sent Oprah an email.
Was he still a 5?
He was
Yes.
still a 5.
Oh
Still
my
five.
God.
He's like, hey, just curious, like, when am I
Can I
going
get
to
this upgrade?
when am I getting upgraded? Because it's all based on points and the number of mass starts. And they got the email, and he gets an email back from them. He's like, and their words were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how this was an oversight, but he has enough points to get upgraded to a Cat 3, but he can't go straight from a Cat 5 to a Cat 3. So he's a Cat 4 and probably will do maybe 1 or 2 more races, like another PR or 2, and then he'll get upgraded to
There's
Cat
your
3. So,
your dialed 3 team
Yeah.
here in the next 6 months or so. It's going to be Tonk, Nate, and Mike, and then Kieran too.
And our team is still relatively young. We're in our 3rd season and doing really well, mind you. But it's not one of those things where like you put together a team and then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of elite, 1-2s and whatnot. We've had some strong people. But what we've been doing a really good job of is growing ourselves organically and having people rise through the ranks. And it'll be neat to see in the next maybe 2 or 3 years more people from our team going into the 1-2 realm. And we weren't there to begin with. And these are going to be people that were kind of like farm raised from us. And it's going to be neat to see them kind of grow and mature as cyclists. So I'm really looking forward to that, because that's probably the one field that we're the least represented in. You know, for me last year, I was the only person racing in the 1-2s, because I was the only person that was higher than a 3.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I had to go through what I went through. But I'm training myself. And part of it is I don't want to go up there and race right now by myself, going through all the stuff that I'm going through, trying to get myself back into shape and whatnot. But I'm going to be working my butt off this off season, and I'm really hoping that like come next year when I start getting my my racing back on track and get out there, that there will be a couple newly minted Cat 2s.
I'm sure Chris Hamill.
I was going to say, you think about the potential. I mean, if we're talking 2 years down the road here, there's a chance you have the Chris's, Jake, Tonk, Nate, and Mike.
Yeah.
All there. I mean, those are like those guys are strong enough to be there. It's just, can they get the points, basically?
And that will make
all
a
those
big
guys
difference.
Are Cat 2
that makes a big difference when you're trying to survive in a race. I mean, I was surfing wheels when I only did one real road race, and that was the Cherry Pie Road Race, and I was the only person there from my team. And I'm, you know, I've got friends in there, and I'm trying to like work with them and whatnot, but they've got their own teams, and there were all the teams out there were highly organized, doing their stuff, and I'm just trying to surf wheels. And I really wish that crash didn't happen in that freaking race, because I really would have loved to see how that worked out. But I was able to make it work. But it would be so much nicer to have teammates to work with.
It makes a big difference.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Because those races are tough. Not only are they fast and intense, they're longer.
Yeah.
And if you want to be able to survive in those, you've got to A, have the time to train, but B, you got to have teammates to help you through there. So, and I would love nothing more than to go do those races and just be the person that's out there helping my teammates get to the finish line, so we can put people on the podium, because that's equal to, if not better, for me, for getting somebody up on the podium than myself winning the race as well. Takes a little bit of pressure off too, but
exactly.
Well, hopefully Tonk will be able to continue to develop. I mean, he's applying to medical school soon, but he's really got a lot of great support. And in fact, it was really cool having Annie there, because she helped out with some of the hand-ups, but she's a very positive, encourageable person.
Both of them are. They're just the neatest people.
Yeah,
so
right.
I've already said neat twice. Sorry.
He'll figure it out with medical school. I mean, he seems to be a very scheduled, regimented type of person, so he'll be able to put it together. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to share about that?
Well, you know, I would say that back to your comment about the team, that's really what made this a great experience, because you saw the rest of the riders in our field, and you'd see that they are kind of at a disadvantage. Yeah. And so we had two solid teams really represented. I mean, the therapeutics guys just had a couple that really didn't make a difference up against teams that had 5 or 6 people. Yeah. But it just made a different racing dynamic, and it made it a lot of fun, and just, you know, traveling out there with the guys and being in the dialed house. Yeah.
And this all kind of starts from team training camp.
Right.
Was it kind of that same vibe, just a little bit smaller?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, you spend your time off the bike eating, hydrating, and you know, talking about random stuff and
massage chairing.
Yeah, and massage chair. But we also had a little entertainment with our juniors there in the house. Sure. Kept it kind of light, so it was a fun time. So I'd say that the best thing is the whole team experience.
Sure. That's awesome. And I was living vicariously through each and every one of your posts.
I was tracking Baker, like, I mean, that just seemed like such an awesome race.
Yeah. The sad thing is,
I'd love to try and build that in next year. Next year is good. Well,
may not be next year.
Oh, are you serious?
They were down, I guess, 75 riders this year from last year, and last year was down a little bit. And the promoter said that might have been the last one.
That's very unfortunate. Now, What
if we could promise?
What would some of the causes of that be? Is it just because road racing in general is starting to kind of shrink a little bit, or do you think it has to do with the timing of when they're actually having the event so close to, say, 4th of July, and people going doing summer stuff?
It could be part of that, but I think that there's also this thought that it's really hard. And that's what I've heard from people saying, that Baker's a really tough race. Yeah. Well, it's tough, but it's not tougher than any race we've done.
That's bike racing.
And, you know, part of it could be that, you know, you finish Sunday on the top of a ski hill at 1:00 in the afternoon. You've got to get off the ski hill. You've got to get down and then have a 5-hour drive home. I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, I got home at 10:00 last night and pulled the truck in the garage with all the bikes still on it and just closed the garage door and went to bed. But I think that part of it is the logistics. That it could be the timing, right around the 4th of July.
Yeah.
So it's really too bad and unfortunate because I think he's got to stop at some point if the ridership goes down.
Sure.
And I guess last year they had some pros come in from other teams, Conti teams. And I guess the gravel stage really kind of rubbed some people wrong that it wasn't a stage. It was just a section of one of the road races. A lot of flats to the point where the wheel cars were empty and some professional guys couldn't get a wheel. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but it would be nice if they could keep it going because it was really a fun race. I would advocate for it and I'd do it again.
Might have to talk to the powers that be in Obra to see what we can do to help support them. And, we really need to start coming together as teams to help support races like this and get more racership out there, get more people involved. Because you hate to see something like that fall off the calendar because we're already losing other great races. I mean,
right. And then, there's some of the races could go away for other disciplines too.
Sure.
I mean, we're lucky to have the number of races that we have.
Absolutely.
And just talking to the team that came and competed against us from Utah, the number of races that we have compared to what they have is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they live in a state where outdoor sports is the number one thing.
Sure.
And we still have way more race opportunities than they do.
Gotcha. Speaking of said Utah team, I heard you have a little bit of history with those guys.
Well, I've ridden with a couple of them.
Yeah.
And we keep in touch, throughout the year. And,
Sure.
And in fact, I went to kind of a winter camp with one of them. He was the one that was on the third step of the GC up until the last stage and then fell to fourth, unfortunately. But it was nice to have some friendly competition out there and some conversations. And, they said we brought a good team and we kicked some big A on them. So, and they really liked to see that there was some organized teamwork out there instead of just a bunch of people that were just going out for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. We're going to talk today. We're going to move on. That was a long back pedal.
Well, that wasn't my back pedal. That was a race report.
It really fills into our topic today, though. So
yes, but it still falls under the jurisdiction of back pedal.
Yes,
but I loved it, and that's the main reason why we had to come to this.
Did I beat Lance? What was his record?
You better have beat Lance because that was by far one of the most interesting back pedals we've had. I was looking forward to that one after tracking Baker this week.
It was the number one reason, and that was like the primary part of this whole podcast was just to go through the whole Baker City, and hopefully some people out there hear that and say, you know what, that sounded like a lot of fun. And maybe if they have it next year, I'll consider doing that. I will do my absolute best to be out there. I'm one of those people. I've never done that race before, and I probably should have in years past. Couldn't necessarily do it this year, but I should get out there and do it next year to help support them and just go out there and have fun in the experience. So let's talk a little bit about stage racing. That's going to be our mini topic for the day. And I wanted to kind of just put that out there for people just so they can start wrapping their head around this and understand what a stage race might be and, what some of the local stage races are and this big stage race we're going to be watching in a week. Let's talk about stage racing. Evan, what's a stage race?
So if we're talking from the Grand Tour Continental Pro sort of perspective, there is a couple different types of stage races. So you have your three Grand Tours. We'll start like the top of the pyramid. Your three Grand Tours in cycling are the Vuelta de España, the Giro d'Italia, and the Tour de France.
Correct.
So those are your three right there: Italy, France, Spain. All three have been around for a very long time. I don't know the years off the top of my head. The Tour, I want to say, was the early 1900s. I think it was like before 1910. It was before World War I, I believe.
They're well over 100 years into that one.
Yes. The stages have gotten shorter because I guess as humanity's gotten softer, I guess, over since that time period. But they do have some great history. If anybody hears this history buff, if you look back at the history of the Tour, it's some of the most interesting stuff you'll see. I mean, it's gone through 2 world wars. Obviously, what happened in France during World War II was a big impact on the race, and just seeing how the races have developed is incredible. But those are your 3 Grand Tours. There's quite a few all over the world. 7-day stage races. An example would be like the Criterium de Dauphiné is a 1 week stage race. And then really when you bring it down to the bottom of the pyramid would be your national level amateur and pro 3 to 4 day stage races, which is what Baker City was.
Right.
Baker City, I would say, is a pretty typical sort of presentation to those stage races. I know in Ohio we used to have one that ended our road race season. Ohio had a really cool setup for that for a while. I'm really not sure if that's still around, but back when I was racing as a 3 in Ohio, we would have a whole road race season, and then it would end with a 3-day road race and time trial combination. I really kind of liked that setup, but in this region, just because of the density of races too, you can pick quite a few different stage races. They are tough to fund. They're tough to convince people to go to, but even being a triathlete and having been to them, they're a blast. And I would tell anybody, if you're even considering it, do it. I mean, they're incredible. Like, there's no better way to test your fitness than racing a bicycle over 3 days.
Yeah, and what was really cool this year is the Oregon Bike Racing Association, so OBRA, we've said that before. They put together the state championship and created an omnium around it. So there were individual people just doing the one stage, and then there were people competing for the omnium. So that was kind of cool to be able to have that about 2 or 3 weeks before the Baker City.
And omnium just basically means it's the difference, just like you said, between somebody picking one of those races over the weekend to race. What you're allowed to do in an omnium would be you're doing the entire thing in the general classification ranking.
Correct.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the cool thing about, I mean, really in the Pacific Northwest, how many stage races do you think there are? Jake, do you know roughly?
It's just the Baker City and
Cascade.
then Cascade. Those
Cascade,
are the only two that I can think of
and
that are
then the state
road.
championship this year.
Well, that's an omnium, so that's
Omnium,
not
my
a
bad.
collective
That's not
time.
considered a stage race, yeah.
Is it more based on points though, based on how you finish with the omnium? If I'm not mistaken, they don't take.
That's
your,
a good question.
I don't think they take
Omnium's points based.
I think it's based on points on how you finish. So
and then a stage race is time based.
It's all based on time, correct?
Right. And then I think Washington, because Chris Surratt went up to Wenatchee and did the Tour de Bloom.
Yeah.
And is there, I thought there was an earlier one like out in Walla Walla, like earlier in the season.
That is too. I was just speaking on OBRA, but the WSBA has a few stage races up there. So I guess you could say we've got 4 different stage races here in the Pacific Northwest between Oregon and Washington. And there might even be another one that I could
there
very
could
well
be
be forgetting.
in there. Yeah, very cool. They are, so going to the next topic here is how hard are they? I mean, being somebody who just finished one, I feel like Whitney can definitely speak to that.
How hard is a stage race?
You know what, though? I think it's kind of intimidating going into it.
Yeah.
But you're in the same boat with everybody else.
Exactly.
Everybody
doing the
is
same race.
piling on the fatigue just like you are.
Yeah.
And the people that are competing for the top step, they're piling on the fatigue. So everybody's in the same boat.
Sure.
So I think there's probably a lot of anxiety for people going into one of these.
Yeah.
But it's not as bad as what you'd think.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to have some fitness. And I think everybody that's probably listening that rides bikes has done, a couple of days worth of bike rides back to back.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's anything beyond somebody's capabilities.
Yeah.
And so I think the other part that you got to get past mentally is the specialty that you're not that good at. Like you might think, oh, I'm really good at road races or I'm really good at time trialing, but I'm not so good at crits. So crits are not my thing. I've only done a handful of crits in my life. I don't like them because I'm old and I don't want to fall and break my bike or myself.
I'm young and I don't want to fall and break my bike. So don't
and I get nervous with some people that you don't know their abilities.
Yeah.
And, knuckleheads in the pack. So I don't like crits and they make me nervous. But, I just get past it and I realize everybody's in the same boat and everybody who doesn't want to go down and hurt themselves. So for the most part, you just get past that one discipline that you're not very comfortable with, and you just jump in. It's not that it's not a bad thing to do a stage race. It wasn't that hard. If you have the fitness to do any sort of road race, you'd have the fitness to do one of these.
How did you approach gaining said fitness going into this?
Well, I think that just my normal riding schedule helped.
Okay.
I did the state omnium. That helped to stack up races, a couple of races in one day and back-to-back days. Just doing some back-to-back work. And, I've had endurance fitness for years, just from doing the whole Ironman stuff and the marathons.
And you keep yourself fit year-round, so you've already got that base layer of fitness. Did you do anything special other than the omnium? I mean, did you have to start adding extra volume, or were you just doing special work like on the TT bike just to work on that position? Or
no, I did. In a TT bike, I've spent so many miles on that in my life that I really don't want extra ones.
Yeah.
So
After 112 miles in the time
Right.
trial position, you're like, that's okay. That's plenty.
right. And I got to the point where I could stay aero the whole time, and my body's used to that. So, an 11-mile time trial was basically nothing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was just a warm up. But I had done the state time trial championship. I had done the team time trial championship all in June.
Yep.
So that was enough practice for me.
Good.
And then just doing a couple of PIR races to get some of that adrenaline going for the crit, and just training for the road races. So I didn't do anything special per se, but I did ramp up the volume.
Yeah.
I think June was one of my bigger months, and I got close to about 900 miles in the month of June, which is
Good.
more than what I normally do.
Yeah. So, talking again about the fact that there's a time trial in there, most people are going to want to have a time trial bike to stay more aero. So, were there people that were really penalized because they didn't have that TT bike and they had to jump on a road bike and try and stay as aero as possible?
It looked rough for those guys.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I feel bad for the guys that were on a road bike. They
can
were at a
lose some serious
huge
time.
disadvantage,
Yeah.
especially in our field. You saw a 5-minute gap over the course of
Wow.
11 miles.
Yeah. And I know that Kieran was another one of our guys that was out there racing in the Cat 3s. And I know that he really suffered in the time trial because he didn't, in terms of like lost time, because he didn't have a TT bike. And I know that even in his comment on his Strava post was, man, I really wish I had a TT bike.
Well, he's a tall guy. And
Yeah.
so when you've got a tall bike and a tall person,
Yeah.
you're really creating a lot of resistance, and you can't get as low as these guys that are on TT bikes.
Sure.
Jesse, he held his own. I think he came in, just above mid-pack in the time trial on a road bike.
Did he strap on some clip-on aero bars?
He did not.
I know.
God, I should have
Yeah.
given him a set to use.
Well, Hatfield even said, hey, I had some of these in the garage I could have brought for you.
Yeah.
The team had 15 bikes up for Chris Hannell
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, so
Yeah.
it was unfortunate, but obviously he didn't need it.
Yeah, we'll have to
Yeah.
make sure that we get the provisions to the people that need
But-
them prior to next time.
To your original question, especially if the time trial had been longer,
Yeah.
it is a huge disadvantage. I mean, I passed a couple of guys that started maybe 3 or 4 minutes before me, and they looked like they were just in miserable times.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So, like, you've got the likes of a Chris Surratt, though. He showed up with his climbing bike, he showed up with his crit bike, and he showed up with his TT bike. He's got a specialty tool for each one of those specialty events.
It was really cool watching him the whole weekend.
Yeah.
He is meticulous in his preparation.
Yep.
And, I learned a lot from just watching him, the way he prepared for the races
Yeah.
and what he did with his nutrition, his bikes. Yeah, he brought 3 weapons to the party and obviously did well with them.
Yeah. He's such a great guy. He's been such a phenomenal addition to our team this past year, and I love having him on the team. He's just always happy, always jovial. He's quiet and reserved, but he's still like very encouraging of people, and he is such a competitor. My God,
Yeah.
that guy is just he blows my mind. I'm like, I don't know how you do this and how you stay that fit all year round, because not only is he good at everything on the road, but he's no slouch on the mountain bike. He's no slouch in the cross bike. He goes out and wins these races at a pretty high level of competition. Something else, man.
Yeah, and
consistency.
he's a great teammate because, sometimes guys that are that fast,
Yeah.
they kind of look down on other people.
Yeah.
But he's so different. He's such a team player. He asked us all before we got there, he says, hey, my folks are going to show up. Can I bring some water bottles for you guys? He brought all the bottles, all the scratch, and
Wow.
he made sure that we had hand-ups available on the 2 road races.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's too lucky.
That's
man.
the person you need on a team. Yep.
All right. Any tips or suggestions for stage racing?
I would say the biggest tip is just don't let yourself get hung up on not doing it for either, the equipment or, the discipline that you're not real comfortable with, or just the accumulated fatigue because everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the same thing with you coming from Ironman racing as well. I think that it's interesting to me because that's usually there's certain things in each sport that people shy away from. And I find it to be ocean swims and triathlon, hilly bike courses and triathlon, and stage racing and cycling. And it's funny because those are all, to me at least, when I've done them, the most fun experiences by far. I mean, they're the most intimidating, but let's be honest, you go to a road race that's like 52 miles in deadpan flat. Yeah, I mean, what does anybody come out of that with like, oh, that was the most fun thing I did this year? No, but if you do something like Baker City, you come out of that, yeah, you're spent, but that's the thing that you remember from that season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with triathlon. Like nobody remembers their, well, I guess in triathlon everybody's obsessed with their PRs, but I mean, nobody remembers like the easy lake swim.
Right, but you remember a big race, and you remember how you felt right afterwards. And same thing with this. It was not only a great accomplishment to finish the stage race, but just being with the team. That was an amazing experience. And then driving home last night, I had the pleasure of, chatting with Ian Gibson the whole 5 hours.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to be able to have somebody to share stuff with. You're not doing it on your own. And I'm sure Chris and John Hatfield, they had the same kind of conversation on the way home too. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Would you say that aside from just not being nervous about it and all that other stuff, but like the biggest thing that you can tell people is to go and connect with a team?
Oh, absolutely. Because the team is what made the whole experience and the race. I mean, obviously Jesse won without a teammate out there, but in our category, we were going up against a pretty good team.
Yeah.
And that's what really made the experience for Chris, John, myself, and Ian.
Yeah. Here locally, we're pretty blessed. We've got a lot of great teams out there, and there's a lot of other teams out there here locally that are relatively new that are really coming up fast, and they're doing good stuff. And I love watching the way that they're presenting themselves, the way that they're starting to work together as a team, and it's fun to watch them race. So I'm really keen on helping them as much as we possibly can. And with respect to places where we're not there right now, we're not in your community, I'm sure that there's a team or a club that's near you that you can go out and be a part of, and I would highly recommend that you start to connect with those people. If you are interested in starting your own team and you're just kind of in the dark, you're in the woods in this thing and you don't know where to start, reach out. I'd be happy to give you some of the little tips and tricks that we've used along the way that really helped us put together something that I think is pretty special. I think we've got a pretty fantastic team, and I'm happy to share with you anything. And if there's something I can do to help you out, I'd be more than happy to do that. But I think that teams are going to be really the key to success for road racing in general to stay, a main thing. I don't want to see it go away, and having people out there to continue to support it. I think that teams are going to be the people that are going to be the ones that are going to be the tentacles to make that happen. So
definitely,
that's just my 2 cents on
Well,
that.
and you've done a great job of building this team, Jake, and then also to see the efforts you've put into the juniors, that's just going to build the future as well.
That's another thing.
Those are the ones who continue racing for a lifetime, or the kids who start early. Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done there, and we've got a lot of people stepping up to help out, and I really need more time. And we're starting to make strides. I'm starting to get a little bit more time. I'm getting caught up with my work day by day, but there's a lot of stuff that still needs to happen, and we'll make it happen. I'll make it happen. I'll keep working hard because that's a promise that I made myself and to the team. I want to see good things happen to us in the community. So I think that's a wrap on the stage racing. Let's jump into one last thing. Evan, one last thing.
Okay. So I'd forgotten one result I really wanted to point out was that we did have a couple of our triathlon friends go and compete at Pacific Crest this last weekend. And Pacific Crest is a race out in Sun River, Oregon, which is roughly smack dab in the middle of the state.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Right next to Bend.
Right next to Bend at about 4,500 feet, somewhere in that range.
Sure.
It's up there in the air. There's less oxygen where they're at there.
Yeah, it's dry.
It is dry, yeah. So Matt, our who's missing today, raced there, and he did the aqua bike, which is a swim and a bike. And if Alan Plank is correct, I think he set the record actually for the aqua bike.
Really?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. His swim has been very strong lately, and I mean he's been biking a lot. So that was definitely cool to see that.
Was
he
that
set the record.
category? Since he won? It said Beast Man. Is he?
So yeah,
Is he a beast?
No, the Beast Man. So he did the swim and the bike of the Beast Man. So it was actually a little long bike. I think it was like a 58-mile bike instead of a 56-mile bike, like it would be in a normal half iron. The Beast Man, our friend Nate Ansborough competed in, and Nate has really been coming on strong lately, really strong lately, and he put down a third place there, I believe. Behind a Pro 1. So really he was the second amateur. But yeah, he had a great race. So him and Matt went out there and killed it in Sun River, Oregon. Yeah.
I'll still call Matt a beast.
There you go. Yeah. He could have gotten through that run if it wasn't for his darn Achilles. So
Cool.
yeah.
Right on. Whitney, one last thing.
Well, I'll just go back to what we were just talking about. I think just jump in and do something you haven't done. Get out of your comfort zone. I'm still doing it, and I'm an old guy, so the rest of you can do it.
Yeah, I fully support that. I think that's a great thing to tell people to do. My one last thing is that, well, just a little side note here of my one last thing. There was a new KOM set on that that Anthony Lakes climb, or the climb to Anthony. Did you notice that?
I did not notice.
And it was set in the race yesterday,
Robert?
and then the 1-2s. No, it was a gentleman by the name of Josh Nelson. Does that name ring a bell?
I don't know who Josh
Good for
is.
him.
So he did this. Gosh, what was it? The total distance on it was 10.34 miles. Does this sound like it hurt that he did it in 47 and a half minutes?
Yeah, because I took an hour and 11 minutes to do it.
He averaged 13.1 miles an hour.
That's insane.
And it's showing here that his average watts going up that were 302 watts. So I'm curious to see how much this gentleman weighs, but that's an accomplishment
Well,
right there.
and a side note on that is when I was climbing, the P12s had finished.
Uh-huh.
Robert Cummings was ripping down the hill, waving. Then when we were back up at the top during the ceremonies,
Don't tell me he did a repeat.
he came back up. And,
Oh, my gosh.
And we said, well, why did you do that? And I think his comment was, well, I just didn't want to sit around and get cold sitting up here. And
They are fast. Wow. So that's my little side note. My one last thing is I'm going camping again today, guys.
Fishing too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this might be a fishing podcast. I couldn't believe all those fish you reeled in.
Seriously.
The fish that you saw in that picture, that was just from day one. We caught just as many fish the next day, and that's where we caught the 3 biggest fish. So
That's outrageous.
I'm looking forward to that. That should be fun, going fishing with my kids. So
Have fun.
yeah, it should be a good time. And then we'll have 4th of July back here at home. So that should be fun. So wishing everybody a happy 4th of July. Be safe. Don't blow yourself up.
Everybody keep your fingers, please.
Yep. Whitney, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, Evan. Good to have
Always
you
a
here as
pleasure.
always. Yes.
Always a pleasure.
Matt, we hope you are driving home safely. And Lance, I hope that bear didn't bite too hard. So
Yeah. There you
the
go.
last thing that
Hope
we
he
hear
fought
from
off the
Lance
bear.
is like little squeal or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have a good one. We will see you next time. Bye for now.
Mo, quiero un consejo. ¿Sí? Un amigo que se llama Joy Junior. ¿Sabadú? No puede haber nombre más ridículo. ¡Oh, no! Adiós, Joy.